Recently I was going through my Atari collection and I pulled out my Atari 7800. I just have a few cartridges for the system nowadays. I used to have quite a few of them. I still have my Atari 7800/2600 Machine Language Monitor Cartridge, and I realized that over the years since I bought this cartridge in about August of 2000, the cartridge has gotten pretty rare. I think the original release of the cartridge in 1993 is one of the first homebrew cartridges for the Atari systems. This was created by Harry Dodgson in 1993, and it was re-released by Video 61 in 2000. I think it was limited to 100 cartridges or something like that. I'm not really sure. When I purchased this cartridge in August of 2000, it came with documentation, which was not bound. It is bound here, and it came with the cartridge, and that cost about $100. I think it was like exactly $100. I decided to bind up the manual because, as you can see here, it's pretty thick. It includes lots of information. I was pretty surprised recently when I found out that there were no examples of this program on YouTube, and the cartridge itself is not freely available from any source that I'm aware of, and the documentation is not available either. Plus, the cartridge is no longer made, so I thought it might be interesting to show you a little bit about what this program can do. Here's a close-up of the cartridge. I'm going to show you a little bit about it and how it looks, because this is the only cartridge that I'm aware of that is both a 7800 cartridge and an Atari 2600 cartridge. And by that I mean it's actually sort of two cartridges in one. I'll show you. Again, this is the cartridge. This is what the label looks like up close, but that's not what's important here. What's neat is the side here. In the up position, well, first there's a switch. It has two positions, down and up. In the up position, this cartridge boots into the 7800 monitor cartridge. In the down position, it boots as a 2600 cartridge. And that's basically what it looks like. It's a very plain cartridge. I don't know if you're interested in the pinouts. I'm not actually sure if this will actually work in a 2600 with the pins in the, or with the dip switch in the down position, but it definitely works in the 7800. I'm going to switch it up. And the next thing I'm going to show you is how this looks in the 7800. So here's the 7800 slot, pretty empty, and now it can be happy because we are putting in the monitor cartridge, which fits pretty snugly. However, this cartridge did not fit very well at all until I actually made some modifications to the cartridge port in my late model 7800. I had to actually open it up and modify the cartridge guide. Otherwise, this cartridge really did not fit. It was very unhappy. It wasn't as bad as, say, inserting a Magic cartridge, but it was worse than inserting an Activision cartridge, which is very difficult to do for any 7800 owner who uses the system is probably well aware. This is the manual that I bound together. It's quite lengthy, as I was saying earlier. I'm going to try to flip through it and show you some of the highlights. It's not going to be super easy. I've got my camera on a tripod. Hopefully that works out. Maybe I'll fade in and out a little bit. I might try to clean up the audio a little bit. I'm just using the built-in microphone on my camera. So here we go. Here's the cover. I actually made this cover for it, and as I said, it came loose leaf, and so I bound it. And I'm going to flip through the manual, try to show you some highlights. So these are the acknowledgments. It says special thanks to Julie Wade at Atari Corporation for her help. She assisted with getting the encryption code for both versions of the 7800 monitor and sorting through the legal issues, including combat, slot racers, and Space War on my cartridge. And what Harry's talking about here is that this cartridge includes 3 games in 2600 mode: Combat, Slot Racers, and Space War. This was originally released, as I said earlier, I believe, in 1993 by Harry Dodgson. It was later licensed to Video 61 and re-released by Lance Ringquest. Here's the license, and this is not freely available as far as I know, unless that has changed over time. It'd be nice if it was, but it hasn't been. So I actually broke this up into various parts for my own uses. I have my table of contents, We'll start off with the first page here. What you get is the Getting Started in 7800 mode, how to use it in 2600 mode, and the Cartridge Overview. I'm going to move this over so we can see a little bit better. You get a Cartridge Overview. It explains the differences between the 2600 and the 7800. I actually had to add some page numbers to mine, and when I was running it through my printer nearly 20 years ago, I accidentally ran it through upside down, so we have page numbers upside down at the top of each page for some of this anyway. So this explains how some of the hardware is set up for the 2600 and 7800. And then we have the monitor subroutines, and this is not really meant to be readable probably so much in this camera. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what to expect if you ever did get this cartridge. It would be nice if the documentation has been scanned, but it hasn't been. So what we have here is a description of what the monitor subroutines are. You have such things as you can call and have it print a character at one location or another. I'll show you some examples, but mostly I'm just going to give you some of the demonstration programs that are included on the cartridge in the 7800 mode. Maybe do a little bit of working out with how the software actually works. So here's the operating instructions for the monitor. Basically, you can you shove it in, make sure into your cartridge slot, and you make sure that the that the dip switch is up, and you will be set, and the monitor will come up, which I'll show you that in a little while. Here's the short example programs that you can use. This is sort of a quick way to use the program, and you can this 7800 monitor cartridge has a way to save your programs internally in RAM in a battery that's on the cartridge. My battery is dead. I can't do that anymore. So I can't be typing in a long program like this. I mean, technically I could, but I wouldn't be able to save it, and I would not be able to restart in 2600 mode and have a program work. Explains how to enter code, some more information on how to use the program. The Atari Ascii Set has been built into the monitor. I believe this is copied directly from the Atari 8-bit Atari Ascii Set. This is the machine language overlay for the 7800 monitor cartridge. And for right now, I'm going to show you what the keypads look like. This is the keypads. You don't get this with the monitor cartridge. These are actually included, I think they were included with the basic cartridge for the 2600, which isn't too useful if you've ever used it before. And these are the overlays as are made in the manual. You don't actually get overlays when you buy the cartridge, or you didn't, at least when I bought it. And so I made my own overlays. They're a little bit better. They're actually taped here. I'm surprised this tape has held up nearly 20 years. It's just Scotch tape, but it seems to work. The monitor uses 24 keys for input, and they are all accessed this way. Some of the keys have more than one use. For instance, the code key, when you're entering data in hexadecimal format, that would be also the D key. And the monitor is smart enough to know which mode you're in, so you don't have to press a shift key or anything like that. Right, let's continue with the manual. This is a breakdown of the system, notes and errata, and this is what I think has been changed since the first version of the program was released in 1993. You've got the monitor use demo, tells you how to use it basically. There's a built-in clock, which has got an error, but it's meant to be there because Harry's instructions explain how to fix it using the monitor. He's got some guidelines on how to make games for the 7800, the 2600, his philosophy of video games in general. He's got some 2600 concepts. I think these were originally published in early issues of the 2600 or the 2600 Connection newsletter that was put out by Tim Duarte, I guess his name is pronounced. He explains some future upgrades he'd like to include, but none of those were ever included. This is the 6502 instruction set. This is information that's easily obtainable online now. Back in 1993, not so easily. What have we got here? More information on the system, opcodes, how to use the system a bit. Let's see. Here's how to program the 2600 a little bit. These are all really overview, but it does give an idea of what to do. Here's some source code. It's not something you can just type in and use. It's basically an overview, as I was saying. In order to use this monitor, it's suggested that you need to know 6502 to some extent, and I believe that. I don't know 6502 very well. I've dabbled with it a little bit, just playing around, and I'm able to use this cartridge just fine. If I wanted to investigate this further and actually program a 7800 game, this is not the way to do it anymore. In 1993, it would have been handy. There weren't really any emulators, I think, available at that time. But since that time, there are better ways to use it, the 7800, and program for it. But this is a curiosity, this cartridge, and it's also something that lets you do some quick and dirty work on the 7800 if you're interested, and the 2600. So here's more source code. Here's more information on program the 2600. Here's an example of what the keyboard overlay looks like without the overlays on it. Or here's the keyboard adapter with the overlays, without the overlays. This 7800 monitor cartridge also works with the Star Raiders keypad and also the kids controller if you want to use that. I might actually make, if I ever use this much more, I might make an overlay for the Star Raiders controller because the buttons are much easier to press. Here's like the numeric 6502 opcodes, including their mnemonics. And that's the end of this section. The next section is the 7800 monitor source code. So the entire source code is available to look at here if you're interested. It's not available online as far as I know. You could type this in, I guess, and work with it. It's also useful to be able to know, if you examine the ROM on the cartridge, you can look at it here and understand a little bit about what's going on. And this is important for several reasons, including that it allows you to use some of the routines that are built into the ROM itself. Here's some demonstration programs. I'll be showing all three of these. There's the bumper tanks, which resides at location D000. There's the Hex Demo, which resides at location D400, and also there's a color display, which resides at D800. So these programs all include their own source code. There's about 60 odd pages of source code for these three demonstration programs. I'm not going to get into the source code, but be aware that if you pick this manual up with the cartridge, it is included in there. What else we got going on here? Here we have the 7800 software guide. Apparently this is available online now. I've seen it. This version of the guide is what was put out by Atari. Harry mentions earlier in the manual that it has some errors in it, which aren't fixed here, I don't believe, in the manual, but online I've read that the errors in this guide have been fixed, and you can check it out. So we'll skip past there. What have we got here? More breakdown of how the system works. I'm not going to go into information too much into that, but it's all here if you want it. Next up is the 2600 Programmer's Guide, also known as the Stella. This is easy to find online, but it's also available here if you want it. And I say that it's also available here if you want it because I guess I should mention again, in 1993, this was not easy to find. In the late 2000s, I was able to find it online, but before that, before someone scanned it in, and then someone even converted it so you could just have it as like a text file and stuff. Before that, it was very difficult to find. So thanks to Harry for making this all available so easily back in the 90s. So let's see, this is an early version of the guide. And interesting, part 7 of the manual has the 2600 instructions for, and I don't think these are the complete instructions, but they're mostly complete, for the games that are built in. You've got combat built in, and again, these were with permission of Atari at the time. And maybe that's why this isn't freely distributable anymore. I don't know, because it includes 3 cartridges from Atari. You've got combat, and the games play exactly as they do on the 2600. Well, you are playing them on the 2600, although Harry does mention that in order for them to work with the 7800 monitor cartridge, he did have to change them slightly, but it doesn't affect the gameplay. We have Space War here, and next up we have the last game, which is Slot Racers. These are very early games for the system, and I'm not sure, but I think he probably decided to include them because they are simple to understand. Well, for 2600 programmer, I guess, but they're simple and they show the basic concepts of how to make a game for the system, or how to play a game and see what a game looks like on a system without using all these fancy tricks that came out later. And and games by Atari and Activision and others, and Magic included, of course. So I'm going to close this book now. I'm going to try to focus now on actually how the system works, and I'll show you the system being turned on. And again, if you ever end up finding this documentation and getting the monitor cartridge for the 7800, it's probably not easy to find anymore. I saw that it's a rarity of 9 out of 10. Until just a few days ago, I thought this cartridge was still for sale, and it isn't, which is a shame because it's a pretty neat one, especially for those who are into programming. I wouldn't recommend trying to program a game, as I said earlier, but you can take a look at code on the real hardware, and that's not something easily done otherwise. This is my Atari 7800 setup in my office. I'm going to show you the parts of the system that allow you to use the Machine Language Monitor Cartridge, and then we'll get started using it. So, of course, we have the documentation. We have a Commodore Amiga monitor, which I have hooked up through RF to the 7800, and since the Amiga monitor doesn't allow for RF to be input into it, I have back there, you can't see it, but I have a Blonder tongue professional TV modulator. I think that used to be used in a television studio or something. You can get them pretty easily on eBay right now for $30 or $50, and they actually do a good job of cleaning up the audio and the RF, so you actually end up with a better signal than you started with, which is pretty amazing to me. I'm going to turn on the system. First, let's see what other parts we have. We have the keypad overlays. We have the trusty ProLine controller, the most comfortable joystick ever created. And then we have the cartridge and the 7800 console itself. You don't need any other additional items. So let's turn on the monitor. We'll get a nice, good RF interference. And there's no there's no way to pick up TV on here, so you won't ever see a signal. And I'm going to turn on the system. And you get your monitor right on your screen right after you see the title screen from the Atari like you would on any other game. So let's do a different shot of a little close-up of this. This rather strange angle is being used so that I can show you how you type on the keypad. I'll do a better close-up of it a little bit later, but for right now I'm going to get bumper tanks to start. What I do is I follow the instructions and I type the address key, and then I type D000, and then I type execute, and I will press reset, and bumper tank starts up. So that's how you press the keypad. This time I'm going to do a close-up of that so you can see a little bit better. So this is a close-up of the keypad, and in order to load a program, in this case bumper tanks, we are going to press the address key. This will allow us to load the location of the program that we're going to load. And while you can't see the screen is on and I am loading the program. So I'm going to press the location D000, and now I can press the execute key. And it's waiting for me to press select or reset, and I'm going to press the reset key, and then the program will load. And I'm pressing the reset key. You can't see the screen, but the program just loaded properly. So next up, I'm going to show you some close-ups of the program running. Now the program is running, the monitor is ready for some input. We're going to load up bumper tanks. The way we do that is I type in the address again. The address is going to be D000, and this time we're going to execute it and you're going to see the program actually run. But before I start it by pressing reset, I'm going to take out the controller in port 1. I'm going to put in the ProLine controller so that I can actually control a tank. See how this works, if I can get this in there properly. Yeah, this makes for it's a little awkward because you have to switch controllers if you want to test one of your programs that uses the controller. Now I press the reset key, and I'm able to move this tank back and forth. And I can bump into things, and if there was a second controller in there, then it would be able to work too. I can't wrap, I don't believe, and that's about it. Now, if the second person was controlling it, it would sort of be a little jerky, but that's to be expected. I do believe that Harry went on to use this for his game Combat 1990. I'm not sure when that was released, but I think Video 61 still has those in stock if you're interested in picking it up, at least as of December 2019. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm not sure if I can get back out of the program here. I can't. So I press reset, it brings me out of the program without having to turn it off. And I guess if I was running a program, that'd be great, because then I wouldn't have to rely on the battery to a backup, and I could enter some programs. Next, I'm going to load up the Hex Demo. So I type in address. Oh, I have to plug in my program. Since the joystick is plugged in, I have to re-plug in the keyboard. And let's see. Actually, now I'm going to have to turn it off and turn it back on, because I'm hitting some wrong buttons, which is fine. You get to see the Atari logo, nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to load up the Hex Demo, which is a simple short program that uses a 160A mode with 16 line zones. He planned to, that is Harry, planned to use this in a game, but I don't think it ever was made. So address, and then this one is D400. So D400, and execute. And now it's pressing reset, and there's your program. That's fantastic, right? So finally, we go back, and we are going to use the color display. And this is a program that was on the Atari 7800 development disk. Harry changed the data locations in the NMI routine to make it more efficient. It shows all 256 colors on the screen at one time, which is pretty impressive. With a joystick in the left controller port, I'll be allowed to change the background color. And when I press the fire button, the currently selected color will be placed on one of the boxes on the side, as you'll see here in just a moment. I'm going to load the program, which is at D800, D800, execute it, and I'm going to press reset, and there's the program. So now I have to plug in the controller for it to actually work. The controller is plugged in, and I can move the joystick around and change the color. Not sure how easily that shows up on the camera, but it works pretty well. And we can see the hex value of the color right here. So for instance, all the way to black, hex value is 00, and I think white would be 0F, I think. Let's go all the way to this side. I guess that's white. So we'll do a little bit of what he was talking about. So we're going to choose the first color being maybe a sort of red. How about, this looks kind of red. And whoops, I pressed it twice. So we'll press it once, and now I'm going to make it kind of green. I'm pressing it twice each time, and I guess it's a little finicky. Maybe make a blue. So the blue is the middle color if you see the right column on the left, or on the right, the middle column on the right. And we will make this yellow. So now it matches the background. And the first color will make sort of a grayish, and now we'll change it to all. The second one will make, how about we make that a blue? Make this color blue. Change the background to maybe a whitish, or maybe a gray, and then you can see the colors on the right. And so if we chose those colors, we'd get a better idea of what it looks like when we run that program. So those are the 3 demo programs, and I'll be trying to show you how to use the actual program to input some data and to execute a short program. So in the basics section of the manual, there's a short example programs, and I'm going to explain it as we go along. Here are some short programs that show how to use the monitor to interact with the 7800. Show the stack. Enter the following bytes starting at address 2280. So first we want to tell it that we're going to start the program at 2280. And now it's waiting for some information, and we're going to tell it we're going to input some code or data. And then we can enter 2 bytes at a time. And the program is pretty short. It's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bytes, and that's it. So we're going to type in the program, which is written here in the book, and I'm just going to type it and say as I do it. So it's D7, and it's going to continue waiting for me to do something. So now it's going to get some more data, 60, 01, 8C, 00 EB 60 and 01, and that's our program. Now what it says is, what this does is alter the display list for the first line to point to the top of the processor stack. You should notice that a few characters are changing on the right side. Press the init key to restore the normal display list. So pressing init, and as I press the letters, you'll see that stuff is moving around, and that's all I want to do. So I'm going to tell it we want to change. We're going to press select, or in order to reset, we need to turn off. I think we need to turn it off. That's how I always have done it. Maybe there's a different way to do it. Let me try pressing a code. Address. That breaks us out of that. Now if we wanted to look at that address, so we're going to look at 2280. So 2280. And if we press, I believe, code, we can see what is there. Whoops, daisy. I'm doing it wrong, which is not what I wanted to do. But this is what happens when you're not used to using the monitor, which I'm not, so that's a good example. You have to sort of work your way into using it again. So I'm going to turn off the power, turn it back on, and I'm going to continue to follow the instructions. The next one is to show the character set. And so at this program, it says enter it at 2000, and it says when we execute the program, it's going to show the entire character set, which is exactly what it does. So address 2000. Now it's going to wait for some data, so we're going to press the data key, and the program is A2008A9D 0024 E8 10 F9 and finally 60. And we press address to escape from there. Now we can execute the program by pressing 2000. So address 2000, press execute, we press reset, and there's the character set at the top. That's the Atari character set, sometimes fondly called Ascii, I think it's called Ascii. And we can still look at our program by typing address 2000, and if we were to type alright, I had to reset the system and retype in the program because I made a couple of mistakes. Until you get used to using this program, it's a little difficult, but it also has a lot to do with my keyboard controllers, which are finicky, to say the least. They're, maybe if I open them up I could clean them or something, I don't know, but I don't use this often enough to make a big difference. So what I'm going to do is run the program again, which is, so it's at address 2000. This is the show character set program. Press execute, I press reset, and there's the program at the top. What I'm going to do this time is I want to show you the disassemble instructions which we can use. So I'm going to disassemble the program from the beginning. So 2000, and I press the instruction, and so on the right hand column we have the instruction, or we have the address of the code. The next byte is showing us what the code is in hex, and then we have the mnemonic. So it's a load X with immediate 00. I'm not going to explain the rest of that, but here's the program. And it ends with a return subroutine. And that's it. That's the whole program that just showed the character set. So basically it's a loop. And for this program there's actually a short way that it shows you how the program is put in the source code. So it looks a little different than this. Like for instance, we don't have to, like, if you look at the line that says BPL 2002, what it actually says here is BPL LP, which is the loop, and it shows you some of that kind of stuff, which is a little different than what we see here. But with a machine language monitor, usually you have handwritten source code, and these aren't used very often anymore, but they are interesting to see, and it is a 7800 cartridge that's not talked about very much, so I thought it was interesting to talk about it here. So this is the program that shows us the character set that we just typed in. Next up, it talks about a way to show the character set with 32 characters per line, and there's actually a piece of software, subroutine, that's built into the character ROM. And what we're going to do is we're going to list it here. And first we're going to initialize the system by pressing the INIT key, and now we have a clear screen, and we are going to tell it to go to location, and the location for this subroutine in the ROM is FE80. So we type in FE80, and now it's waiting for us to press something. So we're going to look at the instructions. So we're going to go all the way until the end of the subroutine, which is right there. So that's the program, and if we execute this program, we're going to see it listed a little bit differently. So again, we tell the address of where this program begins, FE80. So we've got FE80, and this time we're going to execute it and press the reset button, and there's our code listed at the bottom of the screen, a little easier to read. Not bad, right? I've restarted the monitor again, and this time I'm going to use the clock that's built into the system. It says the following program displays a clock in the upper left corner of the screen. The time is set to 1 o'clock. When the program is started, press the select switch to stop the program. We're not going to stop the program, we're just going to run it, and we're not going to try to change the time or anything. This program actually has a bug in it, which is used to, as Harry says, to the advantage of as an example, and where the program here is going to be, or it is in the ROM, at FE94. So first we're going to point it to that area of memory, FE94, and we're going to execute it, and suddenly we're going to see a clock on the right side of the screen, and we can see it counting. The code for this, you can actually look at it, and that's what we're going to do next. So the program is running, and we're going to try to look at another portion. Or first we're going to stop it. We're going to select, and the program has stopped, and now we can type in another address, or maybe we need to reinitialize the system. There we go. So now we're going to look at the memory location so we can see that program as it is in memory, the clock program. So we're going to type address, and the improved memory display, it says this small program displays 128 bytes, 16 lines in hexadecimal notation with the ASCII characters for them on the right side. So let's do that. We can actually show we're going to it's located at FCC0, so FCC0, and we're going to execute it. And now the program, when we press reset, is going to wait. You don't get any input, you don't get any feedback, you just have to know what's happening. And we are going to list where this program is located in RAM, which is FCC0. So FCC0, and suddenly, look at that. We have our hex digits on the left side of the screen. It tells us our memory location. So our program starts at FCC0 and it ends at the return from subroutine. For those that don't know anything about machine language, this is probably all very confusing, but we're going to press init, and this time we're going to list the clock program, which is much longer, but we're going to just show part of it. So initialize, and we are going to now point it at the same routine we just used. So address, FCC0, FCC0, and we are going to execute it. We're going to press reset to start it. Still no feedback. This time we're going to point it to the clock routine, which is FE94, and that's the beginning of our clock program. And you get eight characters for each, or 8 hex digits for each line, and you get see quite a few of them. If I knew where maybe there was some ASCII text in the program, we could take a look at that, but I don't know where any is. So next up we have a program that's going to allow us to line shift, and that's going to be located at F7E8. So I don't know if we'll be able to see it line shifting the program here, but we're going to try it just for the heck of it. So address, F7E8, F7 E8 and execute, and oh, there you go. So now you have Atari 7800, which is flowed right off the screen and goes back and forth. So this program alters the display list once every 60th of a second to horizontally scroll the first line. So that's pretty cool that it's doing that one. I've used this program in the past and there was just a character set up there, so I guess whatever we put on the first line is going to be scrolled. So that's pretty neat. Let's stop that program. Init, or actually I guess select will stop the program. There are a couple of other example programs in here, plus of the source code, of course, and one of the ways it tells you when entering the code is this. There are several different modes available to enter code using the 7800 monitor. So far, the ones that I've been showing you earlier were all data. And it says, if you have access to a 6502 assembler and or you are entering listings that have already been assembled, you will find the code formatted data entry as the best way to go. And I agree, I've tried it. In this mode, you enter the hex data directly from the keypads, and the monitor disassembles it. From the first opcode byte that you enter, it determines the length of the instruction and places only that number of bytes on the line. When you have completed the entry of an instruction, it displays the assembly code on the right side of the screen for you to double check what you have entered. So we're going to try that now. I'm going to actually enter, again, the show character set program, but this time I'm going to enter it using the code entry method, which works a lot better, I think. So first we need to tell it where it's going to be located, same as always, 2000. And now it's we can press another way to get instructions or enter data. We're going to enter data we can press the data key, which would be the way I've shown you previously, which is hex byte after hex byte after hex byte. Or we can get a little bit of simple formatting and feedback from the program by entering code. So I'm going to say code, and it's automatically going to put where in memory the program is going to be located. So it's going to start at 2000, and that's exactly what we want. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to put LDX, and that's going to be A2, and it's going to get one piece of data, which is going to be where to put the data, or what to put for data, and it's 00. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, you get the mnemonic code LDX, and it's in immediate mode, and the data is 00. So now we're at location 2002, and if you had a hex listing, an assembly listing that you were looking at, this would make entering the data so much easier. Of course, this is kind of an archaic way of doing it, but if you decided to use this method, instead of assembling a program and somehow getting it onto an EEPROM or whatever, this is the way to go. So next up, it's just going to be a 1-byte mnemonic, and it's going to be 8A. So 8A. And we get TXA, and that's exactly what we want. I'm actually looking at the example in the book, and it shows the data as well as the source code, so that's very helpful. And now let's say I made a mistake and I entered 9A. Then I could press the address key, and I could go back and enter the data again, starting at 2000, which is helpful to know. In fact, let's just pretend I did do that. I'll do that again. So I'll break out of this by pressing the address. I'll press address again to make it accept an address, and I'm going to say 2002 this time. And now it's going to be waiting for information from there after I press code. And so now I'm going to type in 8A again, pretending that I had typed in the wrong data. So 8A, and there you go. So what we can do is we can press init, and we can see how far we've come in case we forgot. Actually, let's enter the next couple of bytes, and then we'll do that. So we'll type in the next 3 bytes. So this is going to be store accumulator, so STA, and we're going to we're going to break out of this. We're going to make, I actually said I was going to store it there, so we'll do that again. 2003. And we're going to enter code, and at that location we're going to enter, let's see, 9D. My stupid. So some of my keys stick on this, so this is a good example of how you can fix an error that you just made, a real error this time. So address 2003, code, and it's waiting for input again. This time I'm going to press 9D. 9, and then D. My 9 key sticks pretty bad. And then 0, 0, and then 2, 4. So we get STA 2400, X for our program, and now we're going to continue entering data at address 2006 E8, and that's just going to increment the X, and then we're going to do a 2-byte code, which is going to be 10 and F9. And there you can see it gives us that feedback. And finally, we're going to do the RTS, which is going to be 60. And that's the end of our program. It's going to keep accepting stuff, so we're going to press the address key to break out of that. I'm going to press init to clear the screen. I'm going to press the address key of 2000. And I'm going to list the instructions this time. So I'm going to do it until we get to our final. And there we go. That is our program on the screen. We've already seen it run, but this time I'm going to have it run once more. So I tell it to go to 2000, and I'm going to execute it. I'm going to press the reset, and there's our program at the top. Now, since we've done this already, and we already have learned that we can do a line shift, I'm going to end this and fade out by scrolling the top line across from right to left. And then that should wrap up this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's probably not too interesting for people who are wanting to understand some more about how this 7800 monitor works. You need to know some machine language. But I said I was going to wrap up. I haven't shown how the 2600 part of the monitor works. So I'm going to do that next. But first I will shift at the top of the screen. So we are going to accept the address of the line shift program, which is at F7E8. So we type in F7E8 and execute. And now we have the program scrolling across the top of the screen, and we can stop it at any point. Let's stop it about halfway. How about that? Look right here. We stop the program, and I'm going to turn off the system here in a moment and restart it in 2600 mode. This is what you get if you start up the 2600 7800 monitor in 2600 mode. That means that the dip switch is in the down position, and instead of getting the 7800 monitor, you get Harry's menu. It allows you to choose 4 options. By pressing up on the controller, it starts off with combat. If I press the fire button right now on a controller, we'll start playing combat. I press up. If I press the button now, we will get Space War. If I press it now, we'll get slot racers. And finally, here's a question mark. If my battery was working and I entered a short 2600 program and I pressed the fire button, it would run my 2600 program that is stored in memory. My battery is dead. I can't do that, which is okay because this is not the ideal method to store and run a 2600 program. But it would work. So just as an example, I don't know what that one does. I guess we'll try each option, and I will turn it off and turn it back on. So first we have combat. There's the good old combat. Everyone knows that. And I can start the game. It plays just like normal. This program is actually running just as it would from a cartridge. So there's that. I'm going to turn off the system. I'm going to turn it back on. And this time I'm going to choose Spacebar. And I'm going to start the game. And very similar to combat, you're going to go around, fire, blah, blah, blah. Early game. I'm going to shut off the system again. Turn it back on. And I'm going to choose slot racers. I'm going to choose the game. And let's get going. I'm moving. I'm firing. And, the game isn't very exciting. Especially, I think it's only a 2-player game. So I'm going to turn off the system again. Turn it back on. And this time we get the question mark. This would start up the program if I wrote one. But I guess it goes to here if I didn't. And finally, I'm going to start on this last menu, which I don't know what that does. I don't actually know what this is. Maybe it's something that is in the ROM that Harry wrote. I don't remember him talking about this. Maybe it's a surprise. It looks just like a little UFO that you can control. If I knew where it was stored in memory, I would actually disassemble it in the 7800 monitor just to let you see. Well, that's the Machine Language Manager. I'm going to close this out by actually turning the system off one more time, turning it on, and I'm going to, I guess what would be nice is if we just fade out from here. How about that? Thanks, Harry, for releasing this in 1993. Thanks to Lance over at Video 61 for re-releasing this in the year 2000. I'm not sure how long it was available, but it's long been unavailable, and it's an extremely rare cartridge. Lance or anyone who may be watching this, it'd be great if someone could get the permission of Harry or Lance to maybe re-release this cartridge. There's a lot of people out there who might want to check it out. I know that Sean from the 7800 Game by Game Homebrew podcast has not reviewed this program. I actually offered him the ability to borrow this program from me, but he declined because he said he wouldn't know how to use it. So this is kind of why I made this video, for Sean and for those other users who feel like they're not capable of using 6502 code. Surely I am not capable either. But reading the manual, which is quite well written, and grabbing yourself a 6500 programming book will get you going. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, and maybe you can try using an Astrocade one of these days.